Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and welcome to this weekend's edition. I'll be going back in time to, 1998, to Wyoming, to the murder of Matthew Shepard. I want to point out right at the beginning, there's no question he was murdered. He was. There's no question who did it, because there they are. And the evidence was overwhelming. So I'm not going to be trying to figure, it's not a who done it, it's a why they did it. And it's a very interesting case because there's a lot of, this became a very political issue. And there's differing opinions on the politics, which has influenced the way people see the actual crime itself and why these guys did what they did. All right, so I will get into that in just a minute, but first I just want to welcome everybody to the channel. If you're new to the channel, hey, please do subscribe. At least do that. It helps out this channel a lot. Subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and check my playlists, especially the case files for anything you're really interested in. I've got hundreds up there now. And if you're interested in one particular case and you don't want to scan the whole thing, just go to the search engine at YouTube and put in Profiler Pat Brown and the case you're interested in. And if you would like to be in the chat room for the live part of the show, please do join Patreon. Click below. It's $5 a month. And we're a great community. I have to say, I love my patrons. And some of them are here in the chat room, and they make doing the show really enjoyable, that I don't just talk into a camera all the time and not communicate with anyone. So I really like having people in the chat room. So there are two live shows a week, but after the live shows are done, all become public. So you're not going to miss anything if you don't have $5 a month. And believe me, you can't support every person on YouTube. And in today's world, you might not even be able to support yourself. So don't feel a need to do that. I do try also over at YouTube to comment when people put in comments. If I can see them, if they come in right away, I often will respond because I do like to know what you think. So those are the ways you can participate in this channel. All right, let's get to this case. It's a dreadfully sad case. I just want to check back in my chat room just for a second here. See if anybody else rolled in. Oh, yes, Delaney rolled in. And who else rolled in? I've said hello to pretty much everybody, I think, in the chat room. So, yes, we are a cool group. You are. And that's why I like doing it this way. Some people say, why do you even bother with the chat room? Why don't you just do your shows? Because I like the interaction. So, yeah. All right. So now to this case. What about it? I want to say right up front, okay, this is not a political channel, and this is a highly political case. And I know, Sarah, you're the one who specifically really wanted me to do this case. And I've kind of, one of the reasons I haven't pursued it so quickly, because you said it's been 2 years now. I asked you 2 years ago. Sometimes it's just, I just wait for the right time to do cases, or when I get more information or when I become interested. And there's so many, I have a long list, but this is a tricky one because it has political issues attached to it. So I want to say this right now. This is not a political channel. And so I would like you to keep the rhetoric down, whether you're in the chat room or later on, if you're going to leave a comment, please, regardless of your political leanings, please do not make that is about. Okay. And I will explain my stance on some of the issues here as far as, well, you'll see what I'm going to say. So anyway, because it's very tricky. If you don't know a thing about this case, let me start with just doing the Wikipedia thing. And it'll give you, at least let you know what happened. And then I'm going to tell you where I got my sources from, what I watched, what documentaries, what books I read, because I had to really delve into this. Because again, we know who did it. It's not a question of who did it. This guy, see that look on his face? What a scumbag. His friend is not as bad as scumbag, but he's a super scumbag. So poor Matt, as everybody knew him as Matt. Poor Matt ran into this guy. But some people think there's more to it than that. And that's what I'm going to get into. I'm going to get into whether this is a case of being murdered because he was gay or murdered while being gay. And there are people in both camps. And there are also people that think that he was not so, quote, innocent, that he was actually a drug dealer, and that he also had a sexual relationship with his killer. Is that true? Or is that some kind of nonsense? And there are people who definitely go one way or go the other way. And I want to look at the evidence to determine what makes sense, okay? Rather than emotions or political persuasions, okay? That's what I want to get rid of when I do this particular show. All right, but let me tell you the basics here. Matthew Wayne Shepard was an American student at the University of Wyoming who was beaten, tortured, and left to die near Laramie on October 6, 1998. He was transported by rescuers to a name I can't pronounce, Poudre Valley Hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is actually quite a distance away. Just to show you this, because it's not close by. Let me tell you. Yeah. So he's if you look at this, I'm going to come back to this. This is going to be an important map to come back to later. Laramie, you see, is there. Cheyenne would theoretically be the nearest bigger town. I'm not sure because I'm not from Wyoming, but you will also see Fort Collins, which looks like a smaller town across the border in Colorado. And then you can go down there to Denver. But Fort Collins apparently had a better hospital for his condition. Well, and his condition was severe. What happened? Well, when he was essentially dying on this fence, and I'll get into that, but he was dying on this fence from massive head injury. And when they found him, or this one poor fellow just was out riding his bike and goes, "Oh my God, what's that?" He thought it was a some kind of dollar scarecrow thing. And there's a song, by the way, which is called, and it's a lovely song. I really like it. It's called "Scarecrow" by Melissa Etheridge. And thank you, Sarah, because you reminded me of it. I hadn't heard this song in years. It's actually a really good song. I like it a lot. And I'm not even a rock person. I like it. And because it was like he's on this fence and people are like, he was like, "What is that on the fence?" And then he realized it was a human being. Police came. He wasn't dead. So they transported him to the hospital, but they needed to do more. So they transported him down to Fort Collins. And he lasted for 6 days. But he died from the head injuries, the severe head injuries that he sustained during the attack. Pretty horrific that he was actually out here hanging on the fence for, I forgot, almost not quite a day, but a really long time. I mean, it's one of those things you think of somebody who is, it's just, that kind of gets to me, it's bad enough to be murdered, but it's another thing to be dying on a fence and just nobody's coming by and in the middle of flaming nowhere, you know what I mean, out in a field. And if I remember the guy who came by with a bicycle, how long would he have stayed there? And of course, I think that's what his killers wanted, that at least this killer, not so much this killer, but this killer, creepy dude, that he is going to leave him out there and say, well, by the time they find him. But he got lucky that he got found as early as he did, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to save his life. So anyway, suspects, Aaron McKinney, that's that guy, and Russell Handerson, that guy, were arrested shortly after the attack and charged with first-degree murder. Following Shepard's death, significant media coverage was given to the murder and what role Shepard's sexual orientation played as a motive for the crime, as he was gay. The prosecutor argued the murder of Shepard was premeditated and driven by greed. So when they went to court, the whole prosecutor's case was these guys were trying to rob him. McKinney, his defense counsel, countered by arguing he had intended only to rob Shepard, but killed him in a rage when Shepard made a sexual advance toward him. So the defense, interesting enough, presented the concept that if a gay man touches your leg, it sets you off and you kill somebody, And I have heard this argument used more than one time, but by the way. And it's an interesting argument, and usually the argument is set up by the defense and by the defendant to come up with a reason why something isn't premeditated, or that there wasn't a murder during the commission of some other kind of felony, that, I wasn't going to kill a dude, but man, he touched my leg, So I freaked out. That takes away murder one. See, that premeditated goes away if you can freak out over somebody touching your leg. All right. So that's the defense on this. McKinney's girlfriend told police that he'd been motivated by anti-gay sentiment. His girlfriend gets into this whole thing because she's got a baby with him. And he's trying to hide all the evidence and shit. So she's like, I'm trying to save my boyfriend, because she apparently is not a very ethical human being herself. And she was trying to save him. So, hey, there's two choices. One, he wanted to rob him for some reason and killed him over it. Or gay panic. He touched my leg. The guy touched his leg. He was my boyfriend. He touched his leg. And she supposedly said she was motivated. She recanted her statement later. She said she lied because she thought she could help him by lying. And now you're going to run into an issue with this. And I don't know how many times I can say this. When you're dealing with a psychopath, and I'm going to say the P word out loud, psychopath, that dude has got issues. I mean, he's a personality disorder at the top. This guy, I actually kind of, in a weird way, feel sorry for him. He actually felt very bad about what happened. He was actually attacked by him this guy actually hit him with a gun during the actual thing, forced him to do what he did, hit him with a gun, cut open his head. So he actually got beaten up by him during the same episode. Now, maybe you should pick your friends better. Maybe you should have gone to the police. So you deserve what you got. And he said he deserved what he got. He actually said, I deserve it. So I got a little respect for him. He served his life sentence because he said, what can I say? I was there, even though he was my quote friend. I always talk about a guy called adult, person called adult. And sometimes when you have a duo, you've got the leader of the duo and you got the dolt. That's the leader, that's the dolt. And the dolt is like entranced by him because he's the more powerful one and goes along with what he says and ends up in a really crappy situation. He ended up in prison and he thought he deserved to do that. So I have to respect him for saying he thought he deserved it. This guy doesn't feel one bit bad that he killed Matthew. Not a bit bad. He did say he felt bad that he got his nice friend screwed. Little bit of what? Conscience? Or anyway. So the girlfriend of this creep tried to get him out of I guess murder one. All right, so Henderson pleaded guilty to murder. He did. And McKinney was tried and found guilty of murder. Each of them received 2 consecutive life sentences. So now here's where it gets to be more of a bigger thing, shall we say. Because had he not been gay, well, here's the question. Had he not been gay, would he have been killed? First of all, was this a hate crime? Where this guy, was this guy, did he see Matt in the bar and say, that dude's so gay, I'm going to take him out? And he suckered him into getting into his vehicle and he beat him to death because he was gay. Is that what happened? And if he hadn't been gay, would there have been any way that this would have happened? And this is where I'm going to get into all the details. All right. Shepard's murder brought a national and international attention to hate crime legislation at both the state and the federal level. In October 2009, the United States Congress passed the Matthew Shepard and James Beard Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And then 2009, President Barack Obama signed the legislation into law. Following their son's murder, Dennis and Judy Shepard became LGBTQ rights activists and established the Matthew Shepard Foundation. Shepard's murder inspired a number of films, novels, plays, songs, and other works, including the Laramie Project, a 2000 play, and a 2002 film, and Judy Shepard's 2009 memoir, The Meaning of Matthew. Okay, that's the basics. And I'm going to get into the crime itself, but I want to talk about the material that I accessed to try to understand what happened. Okay, and just before I do that, I'm just going to check your comments because I might, just because I like having a chat room. I do, because I feel like we're like people communicating rather than me talking to just the camera. Okay, so hold on a second. We got people here from Australia, so you got your own issues. You do. You do. Oh, this is interesting. Allison, welcome, Allison. Really, we women get unwanted attentions and touch all the time. We don't kill them. I want to point this out. Okay, it's time for me to. I always start with a sweater on, and then it's always so freaking hot once you start talking. You're like, just the heat level goes up. So, okay. Anyway, yes, Allison. This is an interesting point. Women do indeed have these issues where there was somebody who then shows their interest, shall we say. Their interest could be putting a hand on a leg. Their interest could be, it could be just pushing you to the side of a vehicle and, whatever the hell it is. And sometimes it could be in a private room where suddenly you find yourself lying flat on a bed with somebody on top of you, and you're like, no, but you're drunk and you can't really stop them. So that's where date rape turns into a nightmare. So the question is, oftentimes, and especially in this case, if somebody makes a move on you, what do you have the right to do? In my opinion, if somebody makes a move on you that you do not respect and did not encourage, I'm okay with punching the guy in the face. I slap. You remember the old film Slap, Punch? Those things worked. So the claim that he gives that when they're in the vehicle, he touched his leg. Now, mind you, some guys who are not so into, if it's not the person you want to have sex with, especially if it's the opposite sex and you're supposedly not interested in the opposite sex. Or the same sex, I'm sorry, the same sex. Sometimes you're not interested in the opposite sex either. See, that's the point. You may not be interested in the person who is making the move. If they touch you on a leg, it's not exactly extreme. If that's his whole issue, this guy, he had lots of options. One was to say, dude, stop it. Drive him wherever he's going to drop him off. Kick him out of the vehicle, whatever the hell. But driving him to an isolated location, beating the crap out of him, is not proper, I would say, acceptable response. Let's put it that way. And so if that actually happened, it certainly was not a very good excuse for the homicide. Let's put it that way. All right. So yes, that's a good point. And it doesn't matter what sex you are or what the sex is the person is doing to you. Doesn't matter. As long as life is not threatened, you have no reason to threaten their lives or take their life. You do what is appropriate for that situation, which can be very unpleasant, but you can do something. So anyway, Christoph says that is an absolute defense claim. So I'll get into that. Is this claim totally a defense claim, or was there anything to it? Okay. And so it's very tricky when you get down to some of the interesting details of this case. All right. That is very true, by the way. Loretta. Hi, Loretta. He was so small. He was a small guy. When he was found, I mean, even the police thought he was like 13 or 14 years old. Guy was so tiny. He was an easy victim. And this is a very important point. He's an easy victim regardless of any issue of sexual orientation or their issues. He's just an easy victim. And that's something important to point out. If he had been a gay guy who was 6'2" working out in the gym, this wouldn't happen. I don't care what his excuse was, it wouldn't happen. He was a little tiny guy who looked like it. He looked like he was in junior high school. I mean, he just was so small. So sometimes when you look at victimology, which I'm going to look at here, you're looking at why people get attacked, why people end up being victims. And sometimes it has to do everything with how small they are. I say this over and over with females. If you're going to go walk down a path, a bike path or a walking path by yourself at dusk or dawn, you damn well better be sure you're 6'2" and 230 pounds, because no serial killer will grab you. Or if you're 5'6", but 400 pounds, no serial killer will grab you. Why? As I point out, first of all, you're not a trophy. Secondly, it's hard to get your pants off. Third, it's hard to drag you. And four, you can't fit in the back of their little small sports car. It's a reality. But if you are 5'2", 110 pounds, you're targeted, because you're kind of what they want, and you're easy to handle, and you're not going to win. So that's just a reality. So, okay. This, I'm going to get into this. This is where things get complicated. Didn't they know him? Some residents say they did. This is where I'll get into. Okay, so at any rate, this is the situation. He was murdered by these guys, but why? And lots of things came out. Now, let me go to what I looked at for information. All right. So, yes, I did love that song. Okay. So anyway, the Discovery Channel put out the Matthew Shepard story, An American Hate Crime. Well, when you see that, immediately, obviously, they are actually specifically saying this is a hate crime. Not any other kind of crime, but a hate crime, because Matthew Shepard was gay and was killed specifically because he was gay. That's what this documentary is about. First, I'll point this out. Now, I pay for Discovery Channel. Oh my God! Y'all some of you complain about the ads on YouTube, but that's how YouTubers survive. And you can actually click on those ads and get rid of them really quickly. Oh my God, the Discovery Channel, there was so many ads, it was outrageous. I have never seen that many ads in my life, and you can't get rid of them. You have to, so I had to go and I play my Bonsuri flute, I practice things, I practice Spanish, I go to the bathroom. I mean, I'm like, the ads are so incredibly long that this was an 1.5-hour documentary that was torture, absolute torture. I actually couldn't finish watching it for two reasons. One, the ads were ridiculous. And secondly, it was boring. I mean, oh my God, boring. I don't know if I put that, I recommended, you might want to look at it, but one of the most boring things I've ever seen. Did anybody see that? Because it was torturously. And it was definitely what I would call the proper look at the crime as far as politics goes. This is, they were following that, definitely he was murdered because he was gay, blah, blah, blah. And all his friends came on, all his people said he was a lovely fellow. And, and it definitely followed that group. But it was just really freaking boring. Oh my God. I mean, I couldn't make it through. While I look for your comments on that, I will point out, I also tried to watch, no, not that. I tried to watch, not that. Hold on a second. Where did it go? Sorry. Oh, there we go. The Laramie Project. Now, the Laramie Project came out in 2000 as a play. Now, mind you, this was, let's see, he got murdered in 1998. So 2 years later, the Laramie Project came out as a play. The Laramie Project was based on that they went to town and they interviewed all these people in town. And then they did this play where all these people spoke about their feelings, whether they were homophobic or non-homophobic, or, that this was fairly liberal town because the university was there, and the bar he was in it was kind of like, it wasn't a gay bar, but gays were perfectly fine there. So there were different viewpoints. And so the Laramie Project was done as a play. And then was it HBO? Was that HBO? I It's on YouTube. I put the link is below, so you can watch it on YouTube, so you don't spend money on it. I can't say whether the problem with it is that it was better as a play, or whether so many years have passed. Sometimes when you watch something like 20 years ago, you feel a certain way, and then you watch it again, you go, my God, that's terrible. Like, I've watched some things I thought were funny 20 years ago, and now I watch them and I don't even laugh. I'm like, how did I think this was funny? And it isn't a generational thing, because I'm the same person. But I did not like the HBO. I did not like this production at all. The movie. I don't know what I think I might have liked the play version, because the thing is, sometimes things belong on a stage. And you could when you're on a stage, first of all, you can overact in a sense, because you're expressing things to a large to audience out there, and you're expected to do more theatrical things. The problem with the movie, I found, was they're very theatrical, and they were also using famous people, so you couldn't. It's like you're supposed to be the townspeople, and you're looking at the person going, Steve Buscemi. and so I felt like I was being manipulated the entire time, that you had these famous people overacting. And I'm like, what did the people really say? Did they actually say it in the way you said? Even if they said the same words, did they say it the way you said? And what are you picking out to put in this? It was very inflammatory, as far as that the homophobia in the town definitely led to Matthew's death. And I think maybe at the time as a play, it was good. I did not like it. I couldn't make it through. I made it about halfway through, and I said, I feel like I'm being very manipulated and slapped around. And this is, to me, was not what I needed for understanding the case. So I didn't like it, and I was surprised. So then I saw this other one, this was called "Why Was Matthew Shepard Murdered?" The true story of Matthew Shepard's death. And the fellow that's talking, and actually, this was actually easy to watch. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is really easy to watch. And then this guy was in it. And his name is Stephen Jimenez. And Stephen Jimenez is a journalist and an author, and he's gay, just to let you know. And he wrote this book, and it's called The Book of Matt. And he claims in his book that he did a thorough investigation, and the whole murder was not about him being gay. It was a drug deal gone bad, that he actually knew him, and he'd had sex with him, that he was bisexual, they'd already had sex, that both he and he were both drug dealers, and their lives intertwined. And this was a drug deal gone bad. Interesting. Then I'm thinking, well, you just don't know whether somebody's gone to investigate. That when this case went down, it became political so fast. Was the reality of the evidence different? So I went and bought that book. Just want to let you know. And where's the other one? Oh, and based on this book, Matt Walsh, who was a provocateur, wrote, and again, this is not a political channel, I'm just pointing out, he's a provocateur. Matthew Shepard is not worth your praise. Here's why. You've been lied to. It had nothing to do with he was gay. It was everything to do with it was a drug deal gone bad. So Matt Walsh jumped on that because it worked for him. So I went and got the book. Okay. I also returned the book to Amazon because, first of all, I think he's a horrible writer. I don't know how he got so many 5 stars. I swear to God. The horrible writer. His investigations were whole bunches of what seemed like gossip and rumors, and I couldn't tell if there's any validity to any of them. So just because you say somebody said something and they supposedly had this relationship and they were in the back of the limo having kissing or whatever, I don't know. I mean, it was a whole bunch of nonsense, in my opinion. So I was like, I can't even get through this. It's boring. Another boring thing. Boring. I mean, my God, I'm having trouble with boredom. I was like, I can't get through this. It's such crap. I don't know what's true and what isn't true. I don't know if you're just making up a whole conspiracy kind of theory. And I say conspiracy in the sense that you have not a political conspiracy theory, but one that benefits you so you can sell books. Could he be telling the truth? I guess. But I just couldn't buy the stuff that he threw out there at all. And I'm going to show you why with the evidence. All right. Then I bought another book. And that was by Matthew's mother, Judy Shepard. She wrote The Meaning of Matthew. My son's murder in Laramie and a world transformed. And I found this book I kept. I paid Amazon for this one. And I found that I think the truth lies in her book, in the evidence, and between the lines as to what actually happened in Laramie. So this book I recommend. I recommend Judy Shepard's book. Do I think she told the whole truth and nothing but the truth? No, I think she's a mother who has some level of, I don't want to go there. But I also think she was honest sometimes. And she said, I just don't know if I want to go there, which I thought was really interesting because, as she said, her son was not a saint. The son had issues. And this is one of the weird things about this whole case, that with the evidence, the question is, because people don't want, I don't want to blame the victim, but because he was still murdered by these creepy guys, especially this one. But is it are people looking at this crime properly, or are they sort of glamorizing? I don't want to say glamorizing the crime. What's the word for it? I'm trying to think of. Making him at 100% angel. This guy was a devil. Okay, this guy was. But to make him out to be an angel in order to promote the concept that he was like, because he was so small and sort of angelic looking and didn't seem like a threat to anybody, which he wasn't, that he was simply became a target of this creep and his friend because he was gay. And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So, all right. So I'm going to get into what actually are the issues and why do what actually happened? What was the motive on this murder? And I think I will say that I think both sides are wrong. I'll say that right front. I don't think he was specifically killed because he was gay. I also don't think he was killed. He was killed because he was a drug dealer who was in a relationship with him. I think both sides exaggerated the situation, and I'll explain why. All right. So it doesn't mean, what happened was after he was murdered, a political wave came out of it. And we see this in a lot. I just want to point this out. We see this in a lot of issues. Again, not a political channel, but I will say that when people have something in their heart where they feel that they are being oppressed, attacked, dealing with difficulties, or the culture is changing and things are going, they can't control. When there becomes an incident which they can latch onto, especially if you've got groups that can latch onto it, they will bring forth that incident as an example of what they think is wrong with society or the world today. And they're not always wrong in what they're saying. However, sometimes it's not exactly that the incident itself is not exactly what they say it is. I'll just give one simple example. The Fort Hood shooting. I went on I went on national TV and said, I don't think it's a terrorist attack. I think it was a mass murder. Boy, did I get in trouble. Why? Because a lot of people wanted to think of this as a terrorist attack because the guy who committed the crime was Muslim. And so I got attacked for that, saying, oh, you're a supporter of Islamic terrorism. I'm like, no. I mean, I pointed out other terrorist activities and other terrorist crimes. I'm just saying this one to me looks like mass murder. The guy happened to be Islamic, happened to be Muslim, not Islamic, Muslim. He followed Islam, but he was in a midlife crisis. He worked on that base. He was pissed off that he didn't get the promotions he wanted. He got sent places he didn't want to go. And he came back to express his midlife crisis. He just happened to be Muslim. And he may have gone on the internet and gone, let me get something behind me. Oh yeah, look, I'm doing this for Allah. But it didn't mean it was a terrorist attack. And so I tried to explain that. And I'll try to remember to link it below. Why it was not a terrorist attack, why it was a mass murder, even though many people thought it was something else. And so I got attacked for that because there are a lot of people who felt very insecure in this world about terrorism. And they're like, you're just covering up. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying it the way I see it, based on the evidence and based on the history of this guy. So that's the way it was. So anyway, in this particular case, I want to go to the book. All right, first I want to talk about who Matthew was. And this plays into then what these guys were and how this came together. And I'm going to go to his mom's book because I think his mom has the best. She actually has the best, not just because she actually knew him because she was his mother, but that she's fairly honest and in what she says, but and her concerns, because he had a lot of issues. Matthew, or Matt, as people know him as a friend, had a lot of issues, and those issues, fortunately, sometimes they can cross ways with other people with issues. Let's put it that way. All right. So I want to tell you a little bit about Matt. So Matt, I was growing up in, hold on, I've got to find out where we are here. All right. This is from the book, so I'm just trying to get. All right. So he grew up, and there were inklings that he was gay. His mom said, "Yeah, I kind of knew it," but he seemed to be dealing with, his friends, and in his own way, he was unique, shall we say, unique. Then came this time when he was a teenager, where the parents, the father was losing a job that he had if he stayed in the United States, and he had two choices. One was to move to New Mexico. The family could move to New Mexico, or the family could move to Saudi Arabia. She says here, Dennis, that's a husband, his dad, could keep his current job and we would move to New Mexico, or he could take a second offer with Saudi Aramco that would have us moving to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. I remember Dennis and I agreed at the time that as long as we were going to have to move, we might as well really move. So we were leaning towards Saudi Arabia, but we were worried about how the boys, and Matt in particular, would feel about the idea. I'm going to say the dude's gay. Saudi Arabia isn't your number one choice. What were you thinking? Seriously, what were you thinking? First of all, teenagers don't like to move away from their friends. He was doing okay in high school. He was doing okay, or junior high. I can't remember what. Sometimes it's a 2-year junior high, sometimes it's 3 years. So I get confused. He was doing okay, and he would move from Wyoming to New Mexico, or you can take him to Saudi Arabia. What were you thinking? That is not a place for a gay kid. I mean, and it's not even a good place for most people. It's a very restrictive society where you have to live in a certain little quadrant. It's better if you're a dude. No, I'm not a gay dude, but a dude. If you're going along single, I mean, okay, still can't date much. But if you're a female, that really sucks. But anyway, Saudi Arabia is very safe as far as walking around, as long as nobody's pissed off at you for being gay. Why would you take your teenage kids to Saudi Arabia rather than New Mexico? I thought it was a stupid idea. And she doesn't really, I think she's unwilling to look internally and say, maybe that was a really bad idea. So what happened? They sent him to boarding school. Both the kids went to boarding school. He went to boarding school in Switzerland. I mean, I know boarding school is an option for people, because especially if you can go to a fancy boarding school and you can ride horses and, all the kind of crap that you can do in boarding schools. You have money, and you're making a lot of money in Saudi, so you can pay for this fancy boarding school. Is it really? Your son is already a little, I don't know, I would call him fragile. From what she described, he was fragile. Fragile is not really some great when you say, okay, I know you don't want to live in Saudi, so we're just going to send you off to Switzerland. He wanted to go to England. For whatever reason, they decided Switzerland. So he lives there. And supposedly he survives it, but he's very super lonely in the beginning and totally homesick, but he supposedly gets over it. But we're seeing issues here. I mean, there are countries to move to. Saudi is not one of them. And then sending your kids away because, and then there's not a lot of information where they came home, because he was there for a while in Switzerland. Did he come home for the summer and hang out in Saudi Arabia? It's just not. Okay. Just in case you're from Saudi Arabia, let me say this: there's good things about your country, but there's bad things about your country. And I, as a female, would not live in your country. I'll just say that straight up. And I don't know if that's political or not, but I can't go to a place that has the restrictions against female that Saudi Arabia has. But is it safe to walk around the streets as long as you're properly covered? Super safe. Crime is very low. I appreciate that. And there's some very good things about Saudi Arabia. But I wouldn't take my gay son there. And they didn't really. They sent him to Switzerland. But anyway, then this happens. Okay. After sharing, so apparently he decides, when he's, I guess, just 18, to go to Morocco and hang out with his friends in Morocco. It says here, and I've been to Morocco, by the way, twice. Morocco is not an overly safe country, especially for females. I remember being in Morocco, and I was on the street, and I was stupid when I was younger. So this is one of these things when you're traveling. Now, if I were in Morocco today, I'd have my hair, I'd be covered. I'd have a hijab on, and I'd have long sleeves, not like this. And I wouldn't have my boobs hanging out. But I was stupid and young. I don't know how old I was, 23. Anyway, I was wearing probably tight jeans, flip-flops, a little shirt that was like a tank top. No, tube top. Remember those things that go like this? What an idiot. So anyway, I'm walking around the street like that. And this guy tries to harass me, tries to pay me for services because he thinks I'm an American whore. And the police were standing by and didn't give a crap. And looking back, I'm like, I kind of get where they're saying American whore in comparison to the culture. This was stupid. It was a dangerous situation to put myself in. But I was arrogant at that time. And I'm like, I can go to some other country and act any way I want. And the answer to that is no. And so, since then, when I've been in Muslim countries like Egypt, when I was there for a month, I had a hijab on, I had proper clothing, and I was treated very nicely. But I recognize the cultural issues, but I didn't at the time, and I was stupid. And so we have Matt here going with let's see how he's I think, where was he? In Marrakesh? I think he was in Marrakesh, which is a very touristy place. But anyway, after sharing a couple of cappuccinos with a group of German tourists, Matt decides to head back to the hotel. But as he worked his way through the ancient city's winding streets, a gang of 3 local men snuck up behind him, and attacked and raped him. I don't know a lot of the details. Matt never really wanted to share them with me, and I didn't press him to do so. This is one issue that you have to understand as a mom with a son. Some of the details you're going to get are not going to be accurate. Just pointing it out. So one of the many things I've learned in the past decades, something awful happens to someone I love, the most effective coping mechanism is to avoid the temptation to visualize the scene. And he says he thought she didn't want to think about her son was just a baby, 18 years old or whatever. Supposedly got raped 6 times by these 3 men. So they took turns or whatever. A horrific situation that had a massive impact on him. Now, I'm going to hold on to that thought for a minute there. She said, by this time, Matt was a savvy enough traveler to know that he was a target for robberies in America, and he was smart enough to know that he shouldn't go out by himself at night in a strange city. Well, if he knew all these things, why was he out by himself in a strange city? But the 3 men who targeted Matt that night in Morocco apparently weren't looking to rob him. They left his watch which, interestingly enough, yes, Morocco is, again, one of the places where there was a guy, I remember the story where a guy said he was really drunk, and he collapsed in the street because he blacked out, laying in the street. He said when he woke up in the morning, his super expensive camera was still next to him. That robbery wasn't the thing. So they didn't target him for robbery, Mom says. They targeted him for sex. For some strange reason, they took his shirt and his black Doc Martens. Matt said he fought back, and I have little doubt that he did. I've never seen him in a physical spat, but I know a few people with a stranger. Anyway, tried to save his life. Man was twice his size. Bloodied, badly beaten, and shirtless and shoeless, he went back to the hotel room as soon as he could break free from his attackers and woke up his friends. Since this incident, I've heard many stories about men-on-men gang rapes in Muslim countries where the police were less than helpful in tracking down the perpetrators. But she says here that the police actually were very kind to him. But they never found his attackers. Okay. This is supposedly an incident that sent him down a horrible road of severe depression, suicidal thoughts, and problems with drugs or medications, depending on where the information is coming from. But I want you to keep something in mind. We have, in a sense, I don't want to, again, please to understand when you're investigating or doing profiling, you can't just believe everything everybody says. So my thoughts were, okay, it's pretty unusual for a bunch of Moroccan dudes to rape a young tourist. Kind of unusual. Could it happen? Yes. But why didn't he stay with people? Why was he alone? What was he out doing? And they're saying he's just walking through the little streets at some hour of the night. But we have some evidence in his history of him searching for sex partners and also possibly selling sex to people. Not saying that's what happened to him, and maybe it started out to be something fairly innocent and turned into something disastrous. But this was a turning point in his life, supposedly, where things went downhill. Was it because he was horribly raped, or was it because he was involved in something that turned bad? And I don't know what the answer to that is. But I can just say this. The only reason I'm pointing this out is because and we're going to look at some other issues that he's not truthful with his family about his lifestyle and what he's doing in his lifestyle. You're going to see this is what fueled the guy that wrote that book. This guy, I don't know if Jimenez tells any truth in his book, but some of his stuff is possible. I just don't know that I can't prove it, so I won't go there, that he was involved in sex and drugs as far as part of his lifestyle, which hooked him up with him. And I'll tell you why I don't think that's true. But I see where, when a person is having issues, that this can affect their lifestyle and their behaviors. And I do think there is one big issue as to his lifestyle that ended up with this guy. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But anyway, so he comes home, he's got issues. I mean, really severe issues. He went to Denver, and he went to a few different places to live. And in Denver, his life spiraled out of control. She says that. We finally got an inkling of how badly things have spiraled out of control for Matt. This was in 1998. It had been a couple of weeks since we'd heard from him. We got a call from somebody who said that he was in trouble and frightened. When she reached his apartment, Matt's aunt found that her nephew truly was in trouble. He clearly hadn't been bathing or eating and hadn't left his apartment for days. The place was a mess. His clothes were filthy, and there was a stench she remembered smelling like rotten food. I was really baffled when Matt later told me that he had first sought help from the St. John's Episcopal Cathedral across the street and was told there wasn't anything they could do to assist him, and then told him he needed to leave. So anyway, they took him to a hospital. He's been hospitalized before for issues, emotional issues, mental issues, psychological issues, because he truly was. He said also he'd been raped. He said he was sexually assaulted when he was a young child, not by his parents, but by somebody else. Supposedly he claims that. And then he claims he was raped in Morocco by 6 times by 3 men. And now he's in Denver and he's self-medicating. They take him to hospital. Doctors diagnosed his depression, realized he'd been self-medicating and prescribed yet another round of drugs. All right. So now he's on medication from the doctors, but he's not taking them properly. And he's also supposedly, according to his mom, is also drinking heavily on top of the medication, mixing the medication with alcohol. He's falling apart, essentially. Why he's falling apart, is the PTSD. I can't get into that. I don't, obviously he claims he's had 2 experiences in his life that were sexual assaults, and those would cause PTSD. Also, in my opinion, having his parents moved to Saudi Arabia and being chucked into a Swiss boarding school. I would call it PTSD as well. So I think he's got a bunch of stuff that really weighed on him, along with being gay and having to deal with that stuff. So apparently there's another incident where everybody says he's super, super, super friendly. Friends, strangers, doesn't matter. He loves to talk to everybody and accepts all invitations. That's a problem. He's overly susceptible to being with anybody. Maybe because he wants the attention. Maybe because he wants the confirmation that he's an okay guy. I don't know. So he goes drinking at a lake. And he was with a couple people, a young man and a woman. This young man and woman started making out with each other. Hoping to give the couple a little privacy, he said he asked the bartender if he wanted to go for a walk. But the bartender turned him down. When Matt persisted, grabbing him by the shirt and asking him to leave the lovers alone, the bartender punched Matt twice in the jaw, knocking him unconscious. The story here by the bartender is that Matt was coming on to him. That's why he punched him. Matt's story was he was trying to protect these two lovers. I'm sorry, I would go with the bartender more than I go with that silly love. That he cared so much about these two people kissing and that the bartender was looking over there. I mean, come on now. If two people are kissing and the bartender can see them, they can move their asses further away. I mean, he could have gone to the people and said, psst. Yeah, but no, he wasn't. So the story, the bartender ended up punching him. Questionable story there. So this is important because there is the concept that he was involved in prostitution, that his lifestyle, he needed money for something. He was involved in prostitution, and that he was also very I don't want the word aggressive, but very much having no problem going up to people and saying, hey, which can make people uncomfortable if they're not interested. And that would be male or female, gay or not gay. Wouldn't make any difference. So anyway, so he gets knocked unconscious by this bartender. We, of course, and then so it goes further down here. We understood, of course, he's still suffering from the after effects of the attack 2 years before. But by this point, we didn't buy it as an adequate excuse for his behavior that night. His decisions since the rape, including his blatant disregard for the schedule prescribed with the drugs doctors have been giving him to help him with anxiety and depression, were also to blame. I'm with you there. Matt only remembered to take the drugs when he wasn't feeling well, so the pills only seemed to help with the troubles at hand rather than the bigger picture. And because the pills weren't working in the way he wanted, because he wasn't taking them in the way he was supposed to, he often followed up with several glasses of wine or a couple of bottles of beer. As anyone who knows anything, alcohol and prescription drugs, not a great idea, right? All right, so he was spiraling out of control. Now, what's interesting here is that they don't address the possibility that since he's hanging around in bars and with really sketchy people, that he was doing harder drugs than what the doctor gave him. And I believe he was doing harder drugs. Some people think it was meth because that's what this guy was into. I don't know. Again, I can't take the gossip from that one character. That character, most of it sounds gossipy to me, and I just don't know how much is true and how much isn't. So I refuse to give him the benefit of the doubt on that because I just don't know. And you're selling a book. I don't know. And I don't know what your agenda is. I just don't know. But I don't necessarily buy that what you're saying. But do I think he's possibly doing harder drugs? Yes. The answer to that is yes. All right. So anyway, things get worse. All right. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This is from Mom. So this is why I'm okay with this rendition. Again, she's an interesting combo of being very open and also being very protective at the same time. And if I were her, I might do the same exact thing. She says here, I didn't realize at the time, but hanging out with friends was a bit more of a production for Matt than it had been for me when I was in Laramie 20 years ago. So what happened was at a certain point, he decided to go to Laramie and go back to school. And she was thrilled because she's like, oh, thank God, get out of Denver. Let me show you the picture of the map again. Denver's down there. Now he's moved up to Laramie. He's going to go to college again. He loves politics. He's a bright guy. So she's hoping that, okay, maybe he'll get himself together in a smaller town. It's a fairly liberal town. He's going to have gay friends there. It's just going to go better for him there. She was thrilled that he was going to gone back to college. And she was happy. And he said, But after living in bigger cities like Raleigh and Denver, he had grown used to being able to spend his weekend nights socializing at local gay bars. But there weren't, and still aren't, any gay bars in the whole state of Wyoming. The closest thing was a couple of bars, Nightingales and the Tornado Club in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is 40 miles south of Laramie, by way of a winding mountain pass. Matt preferred the Tornado Club in Fort Collins. Look at that, across the border in Fort Collins. Okay, in Fort Collins. Okay. So he tried to hitch rides down there with friends on Friday nights. I still shudder when I think of those 80-mile round trips to the bars in Fort Collins, especially the late night drive home. And I'm relieved that Matt never wanted to make the drive himself. The Bronco that we left with him was very reliable, but it was huge and pretty difficult to maneuver. And Matt was a kind of crappy driver. She admits that. She's like, he sucked it. He wasn't a good driver. He didn't want, he only got behind the wheel when he was absolutely needed to or for a quick trip across town. Remember the quick trip across town. This is extremely important. The Bronco and the trip across town. This is going to play into what happened that night. As foolhardy as Matt was, sometimes he was very careful not to drink and drive or be in a car with a drunk driver, for that matter. He was resourceful, though. He never let the lack of a ride keep him from going to Fort Collins. Okay. Now, what would he do if he couldn't get to Fort Collins because nobody was available? He'd shell out $100 or more to hire a chauffeured limousine to drive him back and forth to the gay bar. If that sounds extravagant and a little bit beyond Matt's means, you're right. The allowance we gave him every month, and they gave him an allowance every month that paid all his bills and everything. He didn't, because he only had a couple of jobs, really shabby jobs that didn't pay much. Yet he had kind of an extravagant lifestyle. He liked to dress well. He liked to spend money on alcohol and whatever else he was spending money on. And they said they gave him a reasonable amount of money, but not that much he could afford to hire limousines. All right. So it became, now listen to this sentence. It soon became clear, this is his mom. This is not anybody else, his mom. It soon became clear that he was using more than his spending money to pay for his social life. How was he getting the extra money to pay for his social life? Sex, selling sex, or selling drugs, or both. That was the condition he was in at the time that this went down. He was paying this guy to drive all the way to Fort Collins so he'd go to gay bar, whatever was going on there. Why was that so important to him? I mean, I know that, you're young, you like sex and, all that kind of stuff, but still, he was way above what he could afford. And he had the money in spite of his parents not giving him enough money to cover those things. So what was he into? And he was highly depressed. He was suicidal. And now, mind you, in the autopsy, there were no drugs in his system. Keep that in mind. So he wasn't on meth when he got killed. But what was going on between Laramie and Fort Collins? Now, this character again will say in his book that what happened was that the limo driver was in on this whole thing, and there was sex involved, and he was like basically a pimp, and also there were drug runs between Fort Collins and Laramie, and so he was involved in selling sex through this company and running drugs, and so was he. And one time they were in a backseat together doing things. That's the claim. Okay. Do I believe that? I do not necessarily believe that. I'm going to say the evidence, in my opinion, I believe the evidence proves they did not know each other. Okay? They did not know each other. And I'm going to show you why I think this is true. All right. So now, for the actual incident, because now I'm going to stop and look at some comments. I'm going to go to the actual incident and show you what to me the evidence says. The limo driver said he was with Matt. Okay, whatever. Okay, I don't know what that means, but all right. This is a good point, Princess. Sometimes when people are too nice, it's also a trauma response. That can well be true. Yes. So there's what kind of trauma he lived through in his life. I just don't have absolute proof of. I don't. They also claim that he was sexually assaulted when he was younger. That's why he had gay panic. Again, I don't have any proof of this stuff. And I, as a profiler, I don't go with things that are claimed. I go with evidence. And you're going to see, I think, why my belief in what happened that night is supported by evidence as opposed to emotions or rhetoric or politics or whatever, or claims. You're going to see that, I think, hopefully. And I'm going to be curious of your opinion when I go there. So, okay, now let me read you what happened that night. So he's with his buddies, and he was with gay friends. There's some kind of thing that was happening. After an hour of drinking coffee and sharing cherry pie at the restaurant with his friends, Matt still wasn't ready to call it a night. He's kind of like going out. Let me say that. He wanted to go to the Fireside Lounge, and he begged every single one of us to go with him. An Alliance member later told the Advocate magazine, but it was weeknight and we didn't want to. We figured that he wouldn't go by himself. Well, he pretty much was good at going by himself, as we see in Morocco as well. But they didn't know him that well because he was very new in town. He was new at the college. Okay. However, it was early in the school year, and the other members of the LGBTA didn't know Matt well enough to know he wouldn't hesitate to go out to a bar by himself. Exactly. He'd much prefer to talk up a stranger, gay or straight, in a bar than head home alone. So after one of his friends drove him back to his apartment, he jumped into his Bronco. Okay, this is important. He jumped into his Bronco. He drove his Bronco that his mom gave him to the bar. This is Laramie. This is not a huge place. His apartment wasn't 50 miles away. He was driving his Bronco a very short distance from his apartment to the bar. This is important because that will lead into why he got into this guy's car when he drove his own Bronco to the damn bar. So he jumped into his Bronco and headed to the bar. The Fireside Lounge was nothing like the Tornado Club in Fort Collins. It wasn't a gay club, but I understand it was the closest anything to a gay bar in Laramie. In other words, it wasn't, quote, gay per se, but it tended to attract a diverse crowd, and that would have interested Matt. The bar could probably be. So anyway, so this bar, gay people did go to the bar. Straight people went to the bar. People hung out. It wasn't, because it wasn't, again, in a town with a university, and it was kind of liberalish. Not necessarily everybody was liberalish, but at least that kind of area was. So it was a comfortable enough place. Maybe not a place where, if he went to Fort Collins and goes to the gay club, he's got his pickings, and he's like, hey, I'm here, he's going to maybe get himself, a nice moment, shall we say. But going to this place, maybe you're just going to hang out with people and chit chat. You might not find anybody. You're just don't want to go home and be alone. Okay. College hangout with a pool table, dartboard, dance floor, and most importantly, cheap beer. All right. Matt arrived there by himself about 10:30. And as bartender Matt Galloway remembered, he sat down at the bar and ordered a Heineken. Matt wasn't a stranger to the bar, so the bartender knew Matt. He remembered serving him at least 5 or 6 times before that Tuesday night. So he'd been to the bar quite often, enough for the bartender. He tipped well. He was very nice. What did he say? He said Matt stood out among the bar's patrons because he was so well dressed, polite, and one of the best tippers in town. Galloway told the police he was one of the most polite person I've ever met in my life. So when you're a bartender and you got a guy who comes in and he's really nice to you and then he tips well, you might remember. So he'd been there 5 or 6 times. Now he's sitting there having a Heineken. He's not like freaking drunk. This is so important. Evidence again. He was there for a little more than an hour. And he didn't drink that much. Unless he drank something at home, because he was having cherry pie with his friends at like a diner or something. He wasn't drinking there. Unless he went home and guzzled something or took some drugs. He was sitting there having a Heineken, for God's sakes. When 2 other individuals, who Galloway described as being grungily dressed, came into the Fireside, this is important. The bartender did not know who the hell they were. And when this other character wrote that book, keeps saying that they knew each other, or that they'd have spent so much time together. Well, the bartender knew him, didn't know them. So they didn't spend time together at that bar. This, again, is going to be very important with the evidence and my theory of what happened. So these guys come in, Mr. Creepy and his Stoltz friend. All right. They came into the fireside. Aaron McKinney and Russell Handerson walked up to the bar and ensured that they'd stand out from everybody else in the fireside that night by ordering a pitcher of beer and paying for it entirely with quarters and dimes. Bartender hated them immediately. It's like, who the hell does that? Which also indicates they don't have a lot of money on them. This is important. They're broke. If you're scrounging and it's embarrassing to go in public, generally speaking, and not just pay for your food and drink with a reasonable either credit card or $20 bill or something. You're going to go in there and have to go through your pockets and put quarters on the counter. It's embarrassing. These guys are out of money. Okay, so Matt had only lived in a couple months in Laramie, a couple months. And it seemed Galloway just, no indication he knew either of these two guys. In fact, from everything I know about Matt's life, which admittedly was limited mostly to details he wanted to give, thank you, Mom, for your honesty. As she points out, she didn't know everything about Matt. She knew there were things he wasn't telling her. She loved her son, and she had hopes for him. And if he made it through this period of time, he may have finished college and become a great political commentator on the news or something, She loved him, but she knew he had issues. And she knew she didn't always get the truth from him. And if I'm going to look at you and say, if you think you got the truth to every one of your teenage kids or your young adult kids, yeah, no. And I always find it funny because now my kids are in the 40s and my son's like, oh, you know what I did, Mom? I'm like, oh my God, don't tell me what you did when you were 20. He goes, yeah, I used to. I'm like, oh, thank God you're here, So anyway, she knows that she doesn't know everything, but as far as they know, they didn't know each other. He would have run entirely different circles from McKinney and Henderson. True, he was a college student. They were not. Okay. Grungy, not so grungy. They were in different circles unless they connected, according to that one author, and that they connected through that limo company selling sex and also being in the meth trade. So the claims are, I think, extreme from that guy that I'm not fond of. I just don't buy his stuff. I just don't, Stephen, sorry. That he's got this huge meth trade between Fort Collins and Laramie, and these things are coming in, and he's super connected, and he's super connected, and these big deals are coming in. Yeah. But he's got no proof of it. I just don't buy it. Okay, so now, let's see. So this guy, just point out who he is. So you know who he is before this thing happened. Oh my God, he was a mess. His father was a long-haul truck driver. His mother was a nurse. They divorced when he was young. He had a number of run-ins with the law. He flunked 7th grade. He stole a cash register. Look at how many times he commits a robbery. This is important. He stole a cash register. It was subsequently placed in a detention center. 2 years later, his mother died unexpectedly from botched surgery. And he now a high school dropout, found himself flush with cash, nearly $100,000, as a result of the settlement and malpractice suit. The money was gone in a matter of months, reportedly spent on drugs, jewelry, and a sports car with a vanity license plate, Dopey. Oh my God. A reference to his small frame and big ears. So he was a small guy too. They were both actually small guys and big ears. Okay. As almost anyone can attest, it's a lot easier to spend a heap of money than it is to break a spending habit. And when McKinney's cash was gone, he turned to robbery again, stealing $2,500 and some desserts from a local Kentucky Fried Chicken in 1997, 10 months before the attack on Matt. He then moved to Florida to escape sentencing for the robbery charge. Came back to Laramie after the police tracked him down. He lived with his girlfriend. They had an infant son. He was working as a roofer, and that's how they both worked as roofers. He was waiting sentencing on charges related to the fast food robbery. Okay. When he walked into the fireside that night, I just don't see any real evidence that he was in this whole Fort Collins, Laramie drug trade for meth. Did he do meth? Yes. Did he do drugs? Absolutely. Did he buy drugs? Absolutely. Maybe he sold drugs, but I just don't see it as these two are connected in some fashion. So anyway, these guys walk into the bar. Galloway, that's the bartender, remembers them headed to the back of the bar. They hung around by the pool table, and they ended up somehow talking to Matt. However it happened, police believe that Henderson and McKinney learned that Matt was gay, whether because he told them or because they simply guessed, and they devised a plan to rob him. Now, everybody who knows Matt says you could tell he was gay like instantly. He was very, very gay. So these guys weren't going to be fooled. It's like, okay. And he was also very, I would say, aggressive in reaching out, shall we say. Like, hey, whether it was because he would make money off of sex, which gave him the lifestyle he wanted, or whether he just liked sex, I don't know. Or whether he did sex for also getting money for drugs. Because drugs weren't in his system. It doesn't mean he didn't do drugs at some point, thinking if I have sex, they give me money, I can buy drugs. Here's the thing. So they left together. These two guys, and the three of them left the bar together and got in his father's, what was he driving? Got in his vehicle, a pickup truck, black pickup truck. All right. Now, I want to ask you right here and now, why would he get in the vehicle with these two guys? And I think this is where I find that a lot of the theories go haywire. Why would he get in a vehicle with these two guys? Somebody tell me. Yeah, there's no question. It's a bad ending. Why would he do that? Why would he get in the vehicle with them? Because this is part of, when you're doing the profiling investigating, you're looking at evidence and you're looking at the way people behave and why they would do something. Why would he get in there? Okay. Broke in needing to score. Well, he did have a problem with, as mom pointed out, spending way more than he actually had. So what was he thinking? He might, well, did he think if he went with these guys, they would pay him for sex? Is that possible? Maybe. That's one possibility. They propositioned him. The theory is, and it's that the prosecution believes that they were going to rob him, and they said, hey, why don't you come with us and have some sex? And that's why he went with them. They did proposition him. That's the claim. The prosecution doesn't really know. And this guy's a pathological liar. So it's hard to know exactly what the plan was. They left with him. Now, some will say he's bisexual and he wanted to just have sex with him, and they already knew each other. And that other guy will say it was a drug deal. So he knew them, therefore that's why he went with them. I don't believe that's true. I think he propositioned them, or they propositioned him, or they allowed him to proposition them. Either way, their intent was to have him go with them, right? They had a plan. I think so. Now, some people say they offered him a ride home. The guy he's only been there an hour. He's drinking Heineken. He's got his Bronco in the parking lot, and his apartment isn't far away. As much as he's a bad driver and careful about not driving drunk, I think he would probably think he could get in his Bronco and drive to the apartment. He doesn't need these guys to drop him at home, and then his freaking vehicle is at the bar when he hasn't had that much to drink. So I don't buy that he gave them a ride story. That's just nonsense to me. It's like, what? That's not why he got in the car with them. So one of the attempts is to make it look like there wasn't something else going on. That he got in the car simply to get a ride home. I don't buy that. I believe he got in the car because they propositioned him, or he propositioned them, or whatever happened. There was something sexual supposed to happen for some reason. I see no evidence that they actually did know each other. I see no evidence that it was any major drug dealer, or so I don't believe that. So I don't believe it was a drug deal gone bad. I just don't see any evidence of that. What I see is he got in the vehicle with him because he thought he was going to get something out of whatever reason he got in the vehicle, whether it just be sex, or sex for drugs, or sex for money. I don't know what their point was, and what he clearly states, which I think is true. They wanted to rob him. They're throwing coins on the freaking counter. He's well dressed. They're like, well, if we get him to get in the vehicle with us, we can rob him. So to me, the most logical reason is because I wanted to rob him. Now, so they get him. So he's like, okay, because he's going to go with these two guys. Whether he thinks, again, if he thinks he's going to have sex for fun, sex for money, or sex for drugs, I don't know. We'll never know. He gets in the vehicle with them. They drive off. He pulls a gun. He's got this guy's, gets his wallet, which he eventually hid at home in I think he put it in a dirty diaper and tried to throw it in trash. This guy's an idiot. But anyway, I will read a little more from Mom. A bit of a mystery is how they coaxed Matt into his 76 Ford pickup. The police suggested that Henderson and McKinney's robbery plan, including pretending they were gay in order to get his confidence, and then suggesting a sexual hookup with him. I think that's not unlikely. She says, but I think it's just as likely that Matt, who by Galloway's account had consumed 3 drinks, 3 Heinekens, thought he was too drunk to drive and accepted a ride home from the other man. I don't believe it. That's just nonsense. Sorry, Mom. I think that's where you're trying to think that he's just looking for a ride. No, I think there was a sex thing involved here. Whether it wasn't really in the minds of all 3 is another matter. Now, he leaves with Henderson and McKinney. Mind you, these guys don't have a gun to his head. He willingly goes out with them and gets in their vehicle, which is, sometimes you can be victimized because you got issues yourself. This is the only reason I point out his issues. I point out his issues because apparently he did seek sex a lot from people who didn't necessarily want it. So that can cause a problem. Secondly, he seemed to have a problem with money. So he might sell sex for money. And 2, 3, you might have a problem with drugs. All of these 3 things can make you a victim because you're willing to do things in order to satisfy these 3 issues. So he goes away with 2 guys he doesn't know. I don't believe he knows them. I don't buy that guy in his book. I don't think they're both all drug dealers. I think he got in their car because he thought he could get something that he might want, and they would get something that they wanted. He thought it was going to go well, you see, and it didn't. So as soon as they left, a dozen blocks away, they took this roundabout route, and now they're going out to the wrong side of Laramie. That he's not, he doesn't live over there. McKinney later told police that Matt tried to hit on him while they were in the truck, putting his hand on McKinney's leg, grabbing his crotch, and even trying to lick his ear. Henderson, however, this guy said he didn't see any of this. Now, could he have done this? Now, mind you, this guy's driving. Matt's in the middle, and he's on the other side. So could Matt have leaned over while the other one guy was driving and put his hand on him? Could he have done that? Well, hell yeah. Because if he thought he was going in the truck for sex, why wouldn't he think he was going to have sex, for one reason or the other? I can't say he's lying. And if they posed as being gay people, gay men, and coaxed him into the car under the illusion that they were going to have sex for some reason or other, he shouldn't have been highly surprised if Matt decided to pursue that. So it wouldn't be like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. Okay, so that's all nonsense. So anyway, McKinney announced as they approached Walmart complex, he announced, McKinney, guess what? We're not gay and you're getting jacked. And I think that might be accurate. And then he ordered Matt to hand over his wallet, which had only $20 in it. Later, when he was recounting the night in discussions with the police, McKinney couldn't remember if he first struck Matt with his fist or with the butt of his Smith & Wesson .357 pistol. He had a gun. He beat him with a gun, which had an 8-inch barrel. But he told police that it wasn't the small amount of money that set him off. It was the fact that Matt was hitting on him so hard. I think that's a big fat lie. So the gay panic thing, I think, is garbage. I think he and his girlfriend decided to use that as a reason for why he ended up doing so much damage to Matt that Matt died. In other words, if he said it was part of the robbery, that's going to go down as murder 1. If he can pawn it off as, oh my God, I freaked out because the guy just was all over me, then he might get off of having this be an emotional response to something. And if I was a defense attorney and I was a lying dog, like most defense attorneys often are, they'll find a reason. They'll say, hey, this is what we want to go with. Go with that because it's going to get you out of the murder 1 charge. So let's go with that. So I don't believe that's why he did anything to Matt. That's what I'm saying. I don't think this was a hate crime. I think this was a robbery, 100% a robbery. I think because he was gay, they had a great way to get him into their vehicle. So that is why I think he was susceptible. So it wasn't because they were killing him because he was gay, but because, this guy was really kind of just adult. This guy had a plan. And I think there's more to this plan than we see, because why was he tied up to this damn fence? Okay. This to me is very important too. So anyway, he started hitting on him in the vehicle because he pissed. I looked at the car thing. He's like, what, frick, $20? Bam, bam, bam. Okay. Now he's trying to get, there's 3 pieces of information here, which is super important. So regardless of the provocation, McKinney pounded Matt in the face, neck, and chest. As he did, Henderson kept driving for a mile or so past Walmart, and there was a dead end of a paved road called Palomino Drive. He continued 400 yards along a dirt path and then by this split rail fence. Okay. Only then did Henderson turn off the truck and give his attention to McKinney, who by this time was trying to drag Matt out of the truck. Well, he's not much bigger than him, so he's got to work at it. McKinney succeeded in getting Matt out of the truck and to the ground, where he continued to punch and kick him and wallop him with the butt end of the pistol. Henderson, according to his friend McKinney, just stood by and laughed. How drunk? I don't know. If they only had beer themselves, a pitcher of beer, they shouldn't be too drunk. But I don't know if they had drugs or something else before they even got there. Screaming for mercy, Matt begged McKinney to stop. He even tried to negotiate for his life, telling him and Henderson that there was $150 in his apartment that they could have if he would just let him be. Mom says this is what his son said. We don't know that this is true because this is from him. He's saying what Matt said. But still, with the wits about him, Matt tried to trick his attackers by giving them an address other than his own. I think he was hoping McKinney and Henderson would go to the wrong place, supposedly. Anyway, the offer didn't persuade McKinney to ease up, so he continued to strike Matt as he ordered Henderson to get some rope from the back of the truck. When Henderson returned with some white clothesline, he demanded he tie Matt to the fence. The former Eagle Scout did as he was told, because he's a dolt, tying Matt's hands behind his back with his back of his hands facing each other. So it really wasn't on the fence like a crucifixion. It was just tied to the fence because they was trying to keep him in control. And I'm going to say there's a reason for that, which I've never seen even addressed. And so he told him to tie him to the fence. Only at that point, Henderson later told police, did he realize how much trouble he'd gotten himself into. Because at that point, he thought, oh, he's going to rob him. Oh, he's beat him up, so what? And now he realizes he's part of this horrible thing where he's tying this guy to a fence and this guy's beating the crap out of him. And I think I tend to believe him. I actually do. And he said, asked his friend to stop. But McKinney wouldn't. Instead, as Henderson described, McKinney turned his wrath, if only for a second, away from Matt and toward his accomplice, striking Henderson hard on the lip with the butt of the gun. Ended up with 7 stitches. So he did attack. This guy did attack his friend. That was the end of Henderson's revolt. He later told police he didn't do any more to help Matt because I was afraid what would happen if what happened to Matt would happen to me. So he's also a pussy. A wuss compared to this guy who was a violent psychopath. McKinney also began to worry, not for Matt or Henderson, though, about the likelihood he would get caught for what he'd just done. He started to talk with Matt, who was now sitting at the foot of the fence, telling him he was from California. He's trying to lie about where he's from. Not that he's a local, but, I'm from California. Now, let me ask you this question. Why would he try to convince Matt he was from California if they knew each other? That makes no sense. To me, this is not one more example. They didn't know each other. Why would you try? In other words, he didn't think he was going to die at that point. He thought the police might eventually get free. Somebody's going to find him. He's going to tell the police he was kidnapped and beaten by some guy from California. Then he says something else which is interesting. He says, he hoped that Matt would pass misinformation on to the police. He later told police that he took the shoes off his body so he could, if he untied them, harder for him to walk home. Okay, his shoes were in the car. That's the story anyway. I don't know if it's important. But even that wasn't enough to calm McKinney's fear of getting caught. So finally, just to be on the safe side, he asked Matt if he could read the license plate on his truck. The still headstrong Matt said he could, and then read the letters and numbers back 665 AD. to his attacker. Matt's defiance sent McKinney over the edge, and in that moment, he made a calculated decision to ensure Matt would never be able to talk to the police about this attack and struck him hard once, twice, 3 times. That's when he crushed his skull. Now, I want to ask you this question. If they knew each other, why is a license plate important? And I think this is true. This is a story that it's hard for even a psycho to make up because it makes no sense for him to do that. He was on the fence. 2 things happened. He tried to convince him he was from California, and he wanted to see if he could. He already knew what the license plate was. If he didn't know what the license plate was because he was too out of it or whatever, then he could drive away. And the only thing Matt would say to the police is, I don't know, some guys, I saw them they came into the bar, the guys from California, I don't know what their truck is. And so maybe he wouldn't have died. Now, unfortunately, at least according to him, of course he could be a liar, he actually did know the license plate number, which would mean they could identify him. But that would also mean he doesn't know him, because what does it matter what the truck is? If the police come to him and say, who did this? He goes, well, it was this guy, McKinney. McKinney did this to me. Because he knows McKinney. He said, I know McKinney. McKinney came into the bar with his buddy, and they told me they'd give me a ride. I got in their vehicle, and they beat the living crap out of me. At least he did. And McKinney did it. So if he knew McKinney, the whole rest of the story makes no sense. But if he didn't know McKinney or Henderson, then the thing about California and can you read the license plate makes total sense. He did not know these 2 guys. So that's why I don't buy this guy's story, because I don't think he did know them. So it wasn't a drug deal gone bad. That wasn't happening. I think they came into the bar, saw Mark. He did. Saw Mark. He can make some money off of. And here's the other thing. He had an ATM card in there. Why do you think in my opinion, why did he tie him to the fence? I mean, you just beat the shit out of the guy and kill him. You could do that. But why did he put him on the fence? Tie him up. What was the purpose? Somebody please tell me what you think makes sense. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Give him the PIN number. That's what I think is possible. And also supposedly he said, go to my house, I got money there. I think he was tied up and beaten because he was being tortured to get information out of him. Otherwise, there's really no freaking purpose of it. So I don't see anything he was being tortured because he was gay. I think he was being tortured because this creep wanted information from him so he could get more money. If he could get the PIN number, he could go to the bank and pull as much money out as he could. If he could find out where he lived, he could go get more money or rob his apartment, whatever the hell it was. I think everything he said, I think he coaxed him out of the bar saying, we're gay, we're going to want to have sex with you. Whatever he promised he would give them, whether it would be money or fun or drugs, I don't know. But I think absolutely it was a robbery. He didn't give them the information he wanted. He couldn't identify them by name, but he could identify them by the license plate. And that's why he got pissed and beat the living crap out of them. So I think he was tortured for the information. And then I think he was basically killed because he could identify the vehicle. So, I just don't see this as a hate crime. I don't. I see this as an opportunistic crime. This guy's a piece of shit. He's kind of psychopathic, whatever. Right after this, to point this out, right after they finished this, because this goes to show what kind of brain he had. So supposedly they were heading to the fake address that mom thinks that he gave them, which I don't know is true. But anyway, because it was $150 there, they stopped at the intersection of 7th and Harney Streets, where they encountered Jeremy Herrera and Emiliano Morales, 2 young men who were prowling the business district and vandalizing cars. As Herrera and Morales were slashing tires, they came face to face with Henderson and McKinney. This is right after they left him there to die. Who by this time, so they got out of the truck and they exchanged pleasantries, and then things went badly there. They started cussing each other out, calling each other names. And before Morales knew it, McKinney had run back to his truck and pulled out the pistol again. Then he whacked Morales on the head. He's already whacked him on the head. Now he's whacking this guy in the street, Morales on the head. Morales, lucky for him, had a piece of wood, and he came back and whacked this creep on the head. So anyway, that's when the police got involved. And that's why they found in his, if he had just not gotten in this altercation, the police may never have found the stuff that they did if he'd just gone home and gotten rid of everything. But they found the gun with the blood on it, his blood. They found the car with blood in it. They went to his home and they found the wallet and the diaper stuff. So they basically, the evidence was just ridiculous that he got, everything was pointing that he did do that to Matthew. So there's no question. So he got caught because he's not a clever guy. Okay, he's what I call just a low-life piece of crap who commits garbage crime, crap crimes, crimes of just violent crimes, theft crimes, whatever smattering of crimes he can do. That's what he does, because he's a meth head. He does meth. He gets excessive energy and a loss of using common sense, and he had this idea, we're going to rob this guy, didn't get what he wanted, beat him up, drove away, tried to beat up somebody else, and all the evidence was found in his vehicle and in his house. So he's an idiot. He's basically an idiot. But I don't see this as, I see this as a robbery. I don't see any evidence that he was any major drug dealer that had anything to do with this creep. So I think that claim that we shouldn't care about him because he was just a drug dealer too. I don't see that evidence. Did he ever deal drugs, or did he just sell? I think it's more likely he sold sex for drugs, because he was severely depressed and suicidal. I think it's much more likely he used sex to get drugs and money to get drugs. I think that's more likely, and also to be able to keep, having a fancier lifestyle. I just don't see him hooked up in a big, huge drug ring. I don't see it. And the evidence at the scene tells me he did not know this guy, or he wouldn't have done what he did. The California thing, the license plate thing, makes no sense if he already knew him. So I don't think they knew each other. So I think we can toss that crap away. So what ended up happening, in my opinion, was that it was just a horrific thing where he was an easy target for these. I'll give this guy a slight break because he's just an adult. He was an easy target for this psychopath who thought he could rob this better dressed fellow who was in the bar and get something out of him because he's gay, so he could get him into his vehicle and rip him off. And what came of it with the protest and the visibility of the gay community, that all came after this, maybe not based on reality, but based on a lot of emotions and feelings, and a lot of things in life happen as far as people protesting and people bringing things to light that are based on something that's not quite as much as that. It's not quite accurate, but still it brings forth the feelings people have, the concerns people have. So it did bring forth a whole bunch of issues that then were examined by a society. And his mother and his dad, although I see the book is interesting because they're not overly pushing the hate crime thing, but they do want their son's death to have some meaning. So that's why they started the organization and all of that. So they're not upset about him being a kind of a martyr for gay rights and safety of gay people, but so they're like, okay, we'll go with that, because I think their son was kind of a mess, and I think they had hoped that the move to Laramie would save him. But I think they also were probably well aware he had so many issues that he could have ended up dead from suicide. He could have just dead from drug overdose, and maybe just like as horrible as this was, at least we can give his life some meaning. And so I really like the book. I recommend the book again if you get a chance. I just thought I liked it. I'm not his. Don't get his. The Meaning of Matthew by Judy Shepard. I think she's a very honest, open person. I think she's keeping some things that she feels probably guilty about and just don't want to go there. As a parent, I see why. But I think she's I think a lot of her stuff was very open and honest. And if I hadn't read her book, I don't think I'd have the same conclusions on this crime that I would have for the other guy's book would definitely, oh, he's just a drug dealer. And they were already having an affair and it all blew up. No, yeah, that's just no. And again, when I looked at the evidence, I just couldn't see it quite supporting a hate crime. Not that I don't know what his feelings on were gay guys were. If he wasn't bisexual himself, maybe he did have issues. It's like, I don't really care about him. He's not. People oftentimes they have less of, well, it's just psychopath. He has less of feelings about anybody. But a lot of times, if people aren't you, if they're not like you, you don't have as strong feelings for them. This is just the way it goes. This is human nature. So let's say another example. Let's say you go into a bar and you're going to grab somebody because you want to rob them. And you're okay, I'm going to not say white guys because he's a white guy. So let's say two black guys go into a bar and they see a slim Indian fella sitting there. Okay, a brown fella. And they go, hey, and they come up with some reason for that guy to leave with them, right? It has nothing to do with being gay. Would they care about him as much as they would a member of their own community? Maybe not, because he's like some Indian dude, some little Indian dude. I don't know. He speaks funny, That's the way people are. It's not nice, but that's the way people are. So is it a hate crime because let's say these two black guys picked this Indian guy to go rob? Is it a hate crime against the Indian guy? Or is it just he was an easy target and they really don't really have as strong a feeling? Maybe. Yeah, that may be what it is. On the other hand, there could have been a white gay. This was a white gay guy, but let's say it was a white not gay guy. Let's say it was a white guy who looked like he needed drugs. And these guys came up and McKinney goes, hey, I got some drugs in the car. You want to come out and do them with me? And so white non-gay guy goes out with them and he gets killed. Is there a hate crime against what? Guys who do drugs? I mean, say we can just go all kinds of little theories on things when people pick a victim. But a lot of times people pick a victim because the victim to them just makes sense as I can get what I want from them, regardless of their race, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their sexual orientation, just useful. As I've always pointed out with psychopaths, you're either useful or in the way. And he was being a small guy. He really needs a small guy to take him. You can't go for the big guys, because he was a wimpy little thing himself. So maybe he was more targeted because he was small. So I say getting inside the mind of a killer and absolutely coming up with this certain concepts. You can't always do that, but from the evidence I see here, I see it as a robbery and an unfortunate victim that because of his own issues was easy to victimize. So anyway, let me go to some of your comments. I'll shut up. Anyway, come a long way. It's true. The world is not the same as it used to be. This is an interesting point, Kara. What's amazing is every murder is awful and a crime. Why does it need a label? The label, this is the problem. To me, the label only serves a purpose. Like, let's go back to Fort Hood. What was the purpose of calling that a terrorist crime or a mass murder? My whole issue was a terrorist crime, in my opinion, is connected to a terrorist network, a terrorist cell. Somebody sends out their warriors to commit this crime. When you have a terrorist cell in a country, they develop plans to commit terrorist acts. You want to get rid of the terrorist cell. Now, terrorist cells often have lots of psychopaths working for them. I mean, otherwise you probably don't want to go blow yourself up or blow up a whole bunch of innocent people. They're psychopaths, but they've been brought into the cell to go and commit this crime. It's planned by the cell, and they are part of the army. For example, if you take the horrible Mumbai attacks, you had some guys from Pakistan who were part of a cell came across to Mumbai and shot up the hotel and the cafe, and I forgot the other ones. Like, tons of people got killed. This was a terrorist cell. You want to get rid of that terrorist cell so that this kind of thing doesn't happen. When you get a mass murderer, there's no cell. There's just a whack job. And sometimes they'll say, well, so he went online, and there are people who said, hey, you should do this kind of thing. And he's like, oh, okay. He's still a mass murderer just because people online talk crap. You can get inspired by anything. Anybody. I mean, serial killers get inspired by watching certain movies. Rapists get inspired by things. Mass murderers get inspired by the Columbine. And people talking about Columbine. You can get inspired by anything. But if you're not part of a cell, if you're acting on your own, then you're usually doing it for your own reasons. So it's because you get a thrill out of it, because you want your day in the sun. So Columbine wanted to go kill all the teens because that made them somebody, the Columbine guys. And the same thing for a lot of other school shootings. And sometimes there's a label. I remember, was the guy who killed all the black church? I can't remember now. And it was considered a hate crime. And I looked at that and said, that's a mass murder. And people go, well, why would you say that? He was a white guy who killed a bunch of black people. So, well, yeah, he did. But is that why he did it? Because they were black? And it turned out that he actually had friends who were black in a part of his life. But did he do that because it would get more attention in the media? It wasn't that he necessarily hated black people, but the media loves to put out stories about a white person committing a hate crime against black people. So if he wants attention, he'll go do that. There's also the black guy who ran over all the people in the parade. They were all white. That was not, I don't know if that was, I can't remember if that was labeled a hate crime. Was it a hate crime? Or was it just he knew he'd get a lot of attention? I don't know what the media thought of that one. Sometimes, again, it becomes very political. So, whether you're going to label something a hate crime or not becomes a political issue, more so than the actual killer themselves, which they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I just thought it was fun. It's like, or I picked that group because that would get me attention. Killing little children in school, is it because they have hate against little children? Or is it because it'll get a lot of attention in the media? So I never hear about that. They hate nursery school kids. That's a hate crime. So nobody ever says that. Why not? Couldn't they hate little kids? Because, little kids can be really annoying. Couldn't that be the reason? But so it's often becomes, the hate crime thing is a little weird in that it's hard to prove and it's hard to know. Now, having said that, are there particular people who have issues about other groups of people and want to perpetrate crimes against those people because they are angry that those people are in their world, in their community? Yes. So do hate crimes exist? Yes. But do we always know when it was a hate crime and when isn't? Not necessarily. So I think a lot of times that it's very hard to determine. The crime itself should be punished the same way, in my opinion. You go murder people, murder a bunch of people. I really don't care what your motive is. You deserve to go down regardless of what your personal little issues are. And again, if a psychopath is committing a crime, half the time they don't even know what their issues are. And they may just be making it up. I don't know, it's hard to prove. So yeah, it's tricky. It really is very, very tricky. Tim says the only reason motive is important is because it helps solve the crime and convict. That can be true. If your motive is not necessary to convict, because if you commit the crime, you commit the crime. Let's say a guy rapes and murders a woman. What is his motive? I call it fun. And fun has not been listed as a motive, and I think it should be. Would you do it? Oh, I had fun, Made me feel powerful. Power and control. Is that a motive? I think so. But does that work in a court of law, really? And a lot of the stuff that happens in court of law is just mostly bullshit stuff. It just really doesn't matter. Now, where motive would matter is if you don't know who did it, and you're looking at how the crime went down and saying, what does this lead me to? What kind of perpetrator would this lead me to? Now, what will be a little bit concerning in this crime is if you know Matt is gay and you immediately assume it's a hate crime, so you look for people who hate gay people. Would that have identified them? And I don't know that it would have identified them. Now, on the other hand, thought if this guy was trying to be robbed, this guy would come up like, how about this guy? Because he's a that's what he is. He's a violent robber, and so he would come up more likely on your he'd pop up if you're looking for a violent robber more so than if you're looking for somebody who hated gay people. So see, it gets kind of confusing there. Christoph says, I had my day in the sun today. I just sat in the spring sun. Hey, for those of us who aren't murderous psychopaths, that is a great day in the sun. I'm with you. It's funny because I try to get away in the winter. I'm in Maryland, and I always try to get away in the winter. And for all my life, I've ended up in Maryland for like 40 freaking years. And I love the tropics. And sometimes in the winter, I've gone away to India. I've gone to India 5 times in the winter. I've gone to Mexico 5 times in the winter. I've gone to Hawaii 5 times in the winter. I've gone to Nicaragua, Costa Rica. I've gone to places in the winter. But I've always told myself that I can get through winter because it's not that bad, is it? And every winter I get really depressed and I eat like a pig, and it doesn't go well. So I need to get away. And this winter I didn't get away. And I told myself again, I'll be fine. And I'm not. I still hate winter, and it still depresses me, and I still don't do well with it. But the funny thing is, it was yesterday. That sun you talk about, that spring day popped up early. Now, we call it fake spring because in Maryland, you get one really nice day and you think spring is here. And then the next day it's like horrible and it snows. And then you don't get spring till the last day of May, right? One day before summer, right? But I remember, I always feel the same way. I'm driving down the road with the windows open or the top down on my Mazda. And I'm like, I feel like life is rushing back into my body. I feel this level of happiness and hope and everything. I feel so much different as soon as I feel the warmth and the sun. I never feel that way in the winter. I always feel, yeah. So I'm with you. I can have my day in the sun. It'll make me a lot happier. Well, some people kill because they're gay. Some people kill people because they're gay. That's gay hate. Theoretically. But again, it would have to be only because they were gay. That's the tricky part. In this case, I don't think it was because he was gay. I think it was because they wanted to rob somebody. He wanted to rob somebody. And so that's the tricky part, is determining if it's truly gay hate or truly black hatred against black people, truly hatred against white people, truly hatred against Muslims, truly hatred against Hindus, truly hatred against whatever. Is it truly that, or is there something else going on? That's where the problem comes in. And one of the reasons we push so hard for the hate stuff is because we're looking at society as a whole and trying to solve a societal problem by focusing on one case that will then represent that societal issue. I think that's what happened here. And sometimes, is it useful? One could say, depending on what your beliefs are and what your politics are, and I don't want to get into that here, you could say, oh, that was great. Some people say, oh, that's not great. But as a profiler who's been asked, Sarah, to look at this crime, I think that it wasn't a hate crime. It wasn't, although what his death blossomed into is something entirely different. And then you can have an opinion on whether it was a good or bad. So, just trying to see what else you have to say here. Let me come down to the bottom now. Okay, so here's an interesting point about motive. Tim has got in here. Let's talk about Brian Koberger. It's perplexing because there's no apparent motive, and this might give jury a little doubt. But if it turned out one of the girls jilted him, that would eliminate that doubt. It would, but if he's an incel, the girl is, whatever girl, has jilted him already before you even met her because she won't have a guy like him. She's one of them. So for an incel, women are to be hated. It's really a kind of hate crime against women. And for him, if he's guilty, it may have been the thrill of getting back. See, a lot of times it's getting back at society in general for that kind of crime. A lot of times I say that with serial killers, they're actually attacking society because they feel like failures in society. Most serial killers are losers, okay? So they haven't made it. Nobody respects them. Women don't go for them, or whatever the issue is. Or if it's a female killing her babies, you didn't respect me for whatever reasons. So therefore, every time I kill and get away with it, it's an FU to society. You know, ha, ha, ha. You know, and that gives them a thrill. So for Koberger, if he did that crime, going in there, I don't think he was planning to kill the guy. I think he was planning on possibly that just the, I don't know what he thought was in that room, whether it was one girl or two girls, because people weren't necessarily where they're supposed to be. So it could have turned from a one-person crime to a two-person crime, or from a two-person crime to a four-person crime, because of circumstances occurred when he ended up there. Because crimes are never go quite as you think. So, but that could be. I can't get those women. He had a history of trying to hit on women and losing. And people said he was creepy. Women said he was creepy. So this could be his way of, once he commits that crime, and if he didn't get caught, of laying back in his bed and going, she won't turn down a guy like me again. Oh, yes, she can. She's dead. That's fun for him. That's a thrill. Every night he goes to sleep, he can dream of that and do other things to that. And it will make him happy. But again, if you're not that person that gets your kicks that way, it's hard to fathom. It's like, what? But that can be the way it works. So basically he just hates all women he can't have, even if they didn't reject him. Exactly. The concept that you just don't get what you want. It's irritating. I mean, to some extent I can sort of relate to what an incel feels. I mean, I know certainly in my life, I was never the best dater. I mean, I wasn't super popular in the dating community in high school or anything. And I could have done a carry, go back to high school and, just because you ignored me or think, well, I'm out here and I'm just not, I see this girl getting this guy and this girl getting that guy. And why don't I find the perfect guy for me? Now I did get married and I was married for 25 years, but since then I haven't been married. And I see women and I'm like, why are they getting that? Why are they getting guys? Well, it's either because they have a more pleasing personality, or they have lower standards, or they're just lucky to meet the right guy. But if I were going to be a female incel, I could just get really all bent out of shape about that. The year after years goes by and I don't get anybody. Why aren't you looking at me? Why are you looking at her? See, I just try to look at things that if you were not mentally healthy and you can't look at something and say, well, there are reasonable reasons for this. There are reasons. Maybe it's, I say my personality. Maybe it's because I'm very particular about who I would like to be with. Maybe it's I'm just not lucky. Who the hell knows? But I have a logical personality, so I don't need to get angry at everybody else or men for my, quote, failures in life. But for those people who have personality disorders, the blame has to go someplace else. So, if I'm not getting a date, it's their fault. And I can start hating all of them. I should show them. So, it's something not in our own minds if you're not deranged. So, you don't have the right, you don't have the rage and entitlement. I don't know if you're talking to me, but yeah, that's stalker's tendencies. No, again, yes. And again, entitlement is part of the problem, is that when we think we're entitled to something simply because we breathe, then we can get angry that we don't have things that why don't I have that job? Why don't I have as much money as that person? Well, a couple of reasons. Maybe we don't have as much talent, you know. Maybe we don't know the right people. Maybe we weren't born to the wealthier people. You know, there's all kinds of reasons. Not all of them are fair. But if if you think you're entitled to that because you breathe, and one of my most hated statements in all of the world is, you deserve love. Right? Really? What? Not really. You don't deserve love because you breathe. You will be fortunate if you find love. You'll be fortunate if you can give enough to get that kind of, lovely response. But you don't deserve it. You don't deserve anything. You're just lucky. If you're on this planet, you're here. And then from that point on, it's an adventure. And some of us do better in the adventure than others. Some of us have some people have have disabilities and serious conditions that prevent them from getting as much as other people. Some people are lazy and don't get as much as other people. Some just whatever reasons. We got all these reasons, but it's not necessarily fair. But if you think, so people say, well, it's not fair, and therefore I have to retaliate because it's not fair. That's when the problems come in. So I deserve a good-looking rich partner. Damn it. Yeah, me too. If you find one, send them to me. Me first. Oh my God. Really? Is that true? The person who first used the word incel was a woman to describe herself. Interesting. I did not actually know that. I'm going to have to go and Google the crap out of that. So yes. But yeah. Okay. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this case. I hope that didn't offend anybody. And again, if you're going to write any comments in the comment area, please do try to keep it non-political and not like hostile, because again, it's a tricky subject which people have a lot of emotions about, and I'm looking at this from a profiling point of view, not an emotional point of view. So, which is what my channel's about. So it's about understanding the evidence and sticking with the evidence rather than something else. And the things I say aren't always popular, but I stick with what the evidence shows me. So again, if you're going to comment, please do it in a polite and friendly way. And if you're really horrible, I will remove your comment. And if you're horrible toward me, I'll block you. I don't have a problem with that because I deserve to be treated nicely. And you don't want to send me out into the world. Okay, so anyway. Wow, really? I'm actually amazed, Sarah. I'm like, wow, okay, thank you. That's very nice. As I say, it's such a tricky subject. It's like, thank you very much, Princess. Oh, one more comment here. Would they have beaten him to death if he were straight, though? Yes. I think the reason they were, first of all, it wasn't they, it was him. And he was the one with the rage problem, the anger problem over what he thought he was going to get and didn't get. I personally think he was beaten to get the ATM number, house number. I think he was beaten for information. And he was doing math. He was like hyped, So, you can't really determine that. So you could say that he wouldn't have gone as far if the guy had been straight, but we don't know that. And that's why I can't call it a hate crime, because I see the motives based on the evidence don't seem to be about him being gay. They don't. I mean, it just, now, in theory, could if they coaxed him into the car saying you're going to, if you give us sex, we'll give you money or drugs, and he got in there and he started hitting on him and it grossed him out because he wasn't actually not bi or gay, it grossed him out. Could he have reacted more angrily than if the guy was straight? Yes. But that could be true with a female and a male too. Let's say somehow a woman coaxed the guy into the car because she was going to say, hey, if you come with me, I'll whatever. And then he starts, grabbing her breasts and doing things, and she's grossed out, even though she enticed him, and gets angry at him because that's what all men always do. Again, you're talking about a psychopath. You can develop stuff, but when you're actually talking about being absolute, it's a whole different matter. One more thing before I go. I will point out there's always a thing called multiple motives. And people always want to have one motive. Motives aren't always just one. So he could want to rob the guy, but he could also want to beat up the guy because he's little. He could also want to say, "Hey, those gay punks they come around town. I've had this guy make a pass at me. I've had some other guys make a pass at me. I could make, let's see what could he? Yeah, sure. That could be mixed up in motives, but the main motive of the crime, it wasn't like he was abducted and kidnapped in order to kill him because he was gay. That I do not see the evidence thereof. I don't. So I will say, the motive seems to very well be robbery. And that he was gay was a good way to get him into the vehicle. And if you want to beat up somebody and get a little more irritation with them for some reason, sure, you can play into it, but I'd stick with robbery. So, that wanted to impress his friend. That's possible. Well, I mean, and what he's going to say, you never can believe him because he's a psychopath. They make up stories depending on what story they need to make up at the time, and his stories have changed. And if I were going to write a whole book, I could get into every single one of the stories that he might have told along the way. But what was convenient for him. And then once you got to understand, once the defense lawyer gets involved, you can't trust anything that happens or is said after that, because a defense lawyer often gives them the statements that they will say. And then they will confess to things that it's not what happened, but it's what the defense lawyer told them to say is what happened. So, So anyway, that's it. So thank you for being here, everybody. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. Check my playlists. Click on the thing and join Patreon if you will. And I will see you guys who are in the chat room. If you're coming back this week for the hangout, I will see you. I'll see you on Wednesday. I think it's going to be Wednesday at 3 or 4 o'clock. So I'll see you guys then. Goodbye, everybody. You were great as usual. See ya.